Welcome back. This is the Press Club. Before we we've moved on from Carnival. Let's look at the Royal Central Police Force. They made the headlines in every major newspaper this weekend. The police rumor, the Voice newspaper, acting commissioner of police denies officers to be fired. Rick Wayne in the Star newspaper impacts who's reigning on who's parade now. The center spread devoted to what I think is a rehash of the impacts report and the implications from the UWP administration across to the SLP, Vernon Francois being sent on leave and where the police force is at now. The Mirror newspaper, unlawful killing, the Shakadan ruling, and the acting commissioner of police rebuffs PWA president. There's the Police Welfare Association president. Cameron Law, I had written to the commissioner at least 2 weeks ago. The commissioner had a press conference on Friday, said he had received the letter, but he received the letter at a point where the police were in the middle of planning the security arrangements for Carnival. That is one of the largest operational activities for the calendar for the police every year. So he could not respond to the Police Welfare Association's president letter. The Police Welfare Association president took it on his own, went on the media, accused the acting police commissioner of sleeping on the job and not taking enough interest in the issues affecting the police force. Yesterday's press conference, the police commissioner, acting police commissioner, pointed out that he had only been in the job for at least 3 months. A lot of these issues raised by the Police Welfare Association, including issues with the Soufriere police station, issues with the promotion and transfer of police officers, are long-standing issues which will take longer than 3 months to address. They existed in Vernon Francois' tenure. He was careful to point out that when he assumed office in Vernon Francois' absence, the police commissioner of Vernon Francois was still the substantive holder of the post and had to be consulted on a number of things. Since then, he has been appointed as acting police commissioner, and he's in a position to make a lot of these decisions on his own. In the case of the bug infestation at CID, he points out that was dealt with quickly in 2 weeks, but he had to go through his ministry, which had to go through the Ministry of Health as well, and that still remains in terms of the Police Welfare Association's request that similar treatment as was performed at the CID office needs to be performed at their homes. Right, so that issue is being addressed. It also raised a lot of other issues about reshuffling senior police officers, perhaps senior police officers being sent home in the public interest, as was done with the chief fire officer. And as Rick Wayne has pointed out in his impacts report, and other people have in writings in the Voice newspaper, I think the editorial also takes on the government for its silence on the impacts report. While it says the government and the Prime Minister has been issuing several press releases and statements on Carnival and every other activity, they've been very silent on the issues affecting the police force, the island's lone national security agency. Your perspective on this, Mr. Busquet?
Well, first of all, in relation to the exchange between Cameron Law and the acting commissioner, I think the acting commissioner dealt with it. I think the only part you haven't dealt with was that the acting commissioner did point out that insofar as Mr. Cameron Law is concerned and the Police Welfare Association, he has an issue with its constitutionality. Right. The fact that it has not had elections of officers, elections are overdue. That brings into question the legality and constitutionality of the executive. Right. It brings into question whether Mr. Cameron Law can speak as the president of an association that either doesn't exist or there are lots of problems in the Police Welfare Association historically before Mr. Law, and those problems need to be given as much attention as Mr. Law seems to be giving to the current acting commissioner, who he has gone as far as accusing of sleeping on the job. I mean, Mr. Law's language as a police officer, irrespective of his presidency of the police union, is not the sort of language that one would expect from a police officer. For example, in his references to calling on the government to say something about the impacts report, he uses the word that he wants the government to come out honestly and be honest. So that's a suggestion that the government is being dishonest. He says in all of the allegations about the current acting commissioner, he responded to them appropriately. Again, I was making the point that the current acting commissioner is from Soufrière. And you're going to take him on about the Soufrière police station. And he was able to point out that the location of the Soufrière police station by the waterfront, what the problem is, it has been there. And I would only suggest that Mr. Cameron Law, go study law to better understand his mandate as president, the extent to which his mandate allows him to be at loggerheads, not only with his boss on the job, but also with the Minister of National Security, whom he sees no problem with also taking on publicly on issues that the minister has had to respond to, pointing out that Mr. Law doesn't seem to know where he's coming from. The whole question of promotion is an issue that Mr. Law has been fighting out in the media. He filed a case against the commissioner of police, and the case was not even properly done. A case filed by a police officer in the interest of a police union was not properly done, so the case was not even heard. So I think Mr. Law has a lot to do, and his best, my best advice to him right now would be to concentrate on ensuring that the association represents officers, because as we speak, one of the problems with the association is that the gazetted officers do not feel that they are being represented sufficiently by the Police Welfare Association, which is not an association, which is a club member that only sees about club members who are paying their dues. The Welfare Association is for the welfare of all police officers, and not only constables, corporals and sergeants, but also the gazetted officers, including the commissioner. So I think that that's all I'll say on that one. The whole issue of the ruling yesterday coming out of the inquest in the Shakadan inquest.
Yeah, but before we move into the inquest, the commissioner, acting commissioner, made a very important point a couple of times in the press conference, that the police force is a disciplinary organization, has rules and regulations, as was pointed out by the minister the last time he encountered Cameron Law. There are procedures within the organization for addressing grievances. The media is not the place for it. All right. Bearing all of that in mind, I'm wondering, is this an attempt by the Police Welfare Association president to perhaps force some kind of response from the Ministry of Home Affairs and National Security on the Women and Forswara issue, because it seems to be a very personal
there's a lot of personal issues happening here. The whole issue of Mr. Vernon Forswara being on leave, all of a sudden, I think the Prime Minister, when he addressed the nation on the 8th of March on the impacts report, he stated clearly why he couldn't say more about the report. He stated clearly what was the future, which was that the report goes to the Director of Public Prosecutions. There were two aspects to the recommendations. One set of recommendations for the government, one set of recommendations to be acted upon by the Director of Public Prosecutions. In relation to the government's role, the government has started doing the things it promised to do, including appointing new gazetted officers at the top, assistant commissioners, offering the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions 3 counsels, new counsels, public prosecutors, just in case the office decides that it has to pursue cases coming out of the report. Until such time as the Director of Public Prosecutions and her office, the report is in their hands. That is, the Director of Public Prosecutions is a constitutional appointee. She cannot be dictated to by the government, just like the government cannot tell the judges what decisions to make in cases. Secondly, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions has a history of being seen as not acting as fast as people would expect. Let's take again the case of the 3 police officers accused of stealing bail money and child support money in a police station. The DPP's office took 2 years to decide whether they had a case to answer. Here you have in the Lambert's case, which is open and closed, you have an allegations and the person's in detention. That is being given as much priority as it deserves by the office of the DPP. But interestingly, Mary Francis, the human rights lawyer, and all others, the police and everybody who has a problem with the DPP office having the report, are not calling on the DPP to explain why she is not moving. Mary Francis called on the media. The Police Welfare Association is calling on the government and the commissioner. Everybody is calling on everybody else except the DPP to decide. But I have reason to believe that the impacts report at the DPP's office is either in a freezer or at the bottom of the file.
We do for a break. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion on the impacts report and the effects on the police force.